Hey everybody, it's Lavender Town, and today I'm doing an experiment. I want to see if using Facetune on my art actually makes it look better. I mean, it certainly makes me look better. Wow, look at her. She's definitely not an alien. So for part one of this experiment, I have to trick Facetune into thinking that something I drew is a face. I figured out that it doesn't really need to be much more than that, just a face, because usually the apps just detect eyes, nose, and mouth, so I didn't need to go past the collarbone. I tried to make something about as quick as I could. I didn't want to pour over anything because I don't want it to look too good so that I don't have anything to fix, as if that would ever happen. So this one took me about an hour, I think like an hour and 10 minutes-ish, but I sped it up so that it only takes 2 minutes in this video because I wanted to basically focus on the editing that I did in the app for most of the video. I did have a bit of a hard time. I really don't like drawing realistically. Like I can respect when people are really good at it and like I think it looks beautiful, but it's just not really what I got into art for. So basically whenever I'm drawing realistically, I feel like it's like a study or practice and not really like my own art, which is kind of a weird hang up. But I tried to reference not anyone's face in particular, but I did have to look up a few pictures of human faces to remind me where everything goes and how to render things out. I'm always tempted to do that like illustrative thing where you make the cheeks super pink and you redden up the nose, but I got called out on that last time I tried to do realism, so I tried to do somewhat more of a realistic modeling around the nose to give it less of that stylized look. Honestly, everything I touch just turns into stylized cartoony anime nonsense, so hopefully I'll have a lot to fix when it comes to the face tuning element. Basically, the nexus for this whole idea was when I opened up the app and I realized that you can actually make the eyes smaller and the nose bigger and things like that, which is the inverse of what these photo apps usually are used for. But the fact that it does have those features is going to allow me to sort of cover up my most common realism mistakes, which is basically taking away the stylization that I tend to add in subconsciously. So now it's time to crack open the Facetune 2 app and see what we can do. I'll be honest, I had a brief moment of panic when I first opened it up because I was doing the more subtle things like auto, heal, smooth, and I wasn't really seeing any change in the art, so I was a little worried that this whole experiment was going to fail before it even really started. Then I found this. So apparently it is able to tell where her eyes, nose, and mouth are, so the experiment is back on. So the first thing I did was I reduced the size of the eyes. I just sort of played around with it and waited until I felt like it looked more realistic. I also made her nose a little bit bigger. Again, anything that's going to make her look less anime and less cartoony is probably going to be a good bet. I even beefed up those eyebrows. I don't know if that makes it more realistic, but I kind of like it. So far, I thought it was pretty cool how it was able to make these edits without damaging the brushstrokes and stuff too much. The emotion changer is complete nightmare fuel though, and it quite warped the drawing. I don't know how this would work on a real face, but I can't imagine that it'd be terribly convincing. Bold of them though to think that they could change your whole facial expression with an app. I don't recommend it. The main reason that I wanted to try this is because while I can do this type of stuff in Photoshop, it usually requires a lot more finessing and a lot more like painting over and blending any areas that I have changed. And also if you don't have Photoshop, this is a lot more accessible. Additionally, this will work whether it's a digital drawing or if it's one that you have in real life, which also makes it more accessible to non-digital artists. Facetune 2 is actually free, so that's great, or at least that's what I thought. While I was editing this, I did realize that it says try all over it. I had to end up saving this to my screenshots because you'll notice if you used any of these try things, they're going to tell you that in order to continue editing that photo, it's going to be $70 or a variety of different monthly plans, which is a little steep for an app, I think. But yeah, that's unfortunate. It should be noted that the original Facetune app I think is only like $4, and I also got that one to test out for the second segment of this experiment. Before I move on to the next drawing though, here is the before and the after. Honestly, my eyes kind of melted from staring at this for so long. Like, I feel like once you stare at something for over an hour, your eyes just go funny, so I honestly couldn't tell you which one I think is better or more realistic. I tried to tone down the things that I most often get criticized for when I try to do realism, particularly the eyes. I definitely noticed that her eyes were too big when I started fiddling with them in the app, but despite certain things, I think that made it better. When I brought in a non-partial observer, literally his first reaction was, yeah, your editing made it look a lot worse. So honestly, I don't know what to believe anymore. Let's just move on to the next drawing and see what other ways we can use and abuse these photo editing programs to change our art. So of course we need another drawing, but this time I wanted to draw something on my sketchbook because I think the strongest contender for actually using Facetune, not just as like an experiment, but for actually changing your art for real, is potentially when you need to basically use the Photoshop liquify tool, but you drew something in real life. Now this happens a lot to me, especially when I lay down my sketchbook flat and I'm looking at an angle. A lot of the times I don't notice weird little asymmetries and things until I'm done, and then I, pick it up and look at it straight on, and then suddenly I'm really frustrated because a lot of things are looking a little crooked or slightly out of place, and there's nothing actually wrong with like the lines or anything, but the whole thing gets sort of put off balance because you happen to miss something or put down something a little bit wrong. I feel like potentially the first Facetune app might be the perfect solution for that, so you don't have to lose your whole drawing just because a few things are slightly off. Not being able to fix little wonky things like that in traditional art is one of the #1 reasons I prefer digital, so if this really works, this is going to be a huge deal for me. Alright, so opening up the original Facetune app, it pops right up with some tutorials that I'm going to ignore, which might be a little ill-advised, but I really wanted to get into the editing as fast as possible. So I wanted to fix the tone of this drawing because that's usually the first thing that I do when I'm taking a photo of a traditional drawing and preparing it to put on somewhere like Instagram. Usually that's actually the only editing I'll do. Basically, I'll just bump up the saturation and the contrast so that the yellowy paper color turns to a white, and then all the colors that I sort of put in marker become a little bit brighter. But this app is kind of terrible for that. If there's an easy way to do it, I couldn't find it, probably because I was skipping all the tutorials, but I decided to give up and just crop the parts of the drawing at the bottom where things were getting a little bit weird because I was reaching the end of my sketchbook paper, and then I just wanted to get right into the reshaping. This tool is a little scary to start working with because it's actually very, very strong. It will warp her pretty dramatically if I'm not careful, but it works actually really, really well. You just have to make sure to zoom in right into the area that you actually want to reshape. Otherwise, you're going to be pulling a lot more of your character around than you probably intend to. Like, for example, when I wanted to move the tip of her hat, because the brim of her hat was nearby, it was also getting warped. I decided to just try to balance everything out and make it look more symmetrical. Symmetry is one of the hardest things to achieve in drawings, which is why a lot of people prefer that like 3/4 face pose because it leaves a little more room for error, whereas looking straight on just shows every little mistake. So I thought it'd be perfect for this. Basically, I've pulled down her hair tendrils so that they're even on both sides because they were pretty lopsided when I first drew it. That was actually a really easy and really helpful fix and made it look a lot more balanced. She also definitely had a weird thing where one of her shoulders was sort of popping out more than the other. And I also wanted to fix her mouth, which was a little more lopsided than it meant it to be. There were a few other tools I tried out. This one just makes your eyes have higher contrast, and it works just as well for a cartoon character, which kind of surprised me. One of the tools that didn't work as well for cartoon characters was the patch tool, which I believe is originally designed to cover up like acne and blemishes. I wanted to use it to cover up the areas of pencil that I didn't fully erase, or any little weird inking area, but because it's supposed to be rather soft on the skin, it doesn't work well with hard edges like line art, so I had to kind of scrap that whole idea. I ended up using the tool that's supposed to whiten your teeth to whiten the whites of her eyes. I thought that would help them pop out, and it would make the sort of yellowy cream tone that's over the whole drawing look more intentional, like it's her skin tone, if the whites of her eyes were brighter. And I feel like that worked moderately well. It definitely was easy to use, and generally I would say that about everything in this app, was that it was quite easy to use. This is obviously not sponsored. I would have told you by now, but yeah, I definitely prefer the original Facetune to the like $60 Facetune 2, at least for art purposes. Alright, so here is the before and after for this one. This one's quite a bit more subtle than the first one that I did, but I actually really like the results. I feel like it didn't drastically change the image, it just made it a little bit more balanced. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching till the end, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much to my wonderful patrons, including Bella Story, Blue Boy, Calpumpone, Clockwork Construct, Dionysus Hadrilis, Dr. Casket, Elizabeth Album, Imagine Creations, JJ Jade, Joseph Copel, Justin, Carla Tapia, Katie Marigold, Kier, Kyle D. Metz, Blah, Midnight Doodles, Micah Dactyl, Musa Deer Rachel, Nora Cornelison, Okamore, Ollie, Rosie Warlock, Sergeant Pendulum, The Artsy Moose, Your Boy ST, and Zoe Stardust.